So picking up where we left off in the Mountain Laurel, we are going to add parameters to our walls, just some of our visual styles, and then also add a floor and foundation to this building. We're only going to do part of the floor for this video, and then we'll go back and finish our floor up kind of after we've adjusted all of our walls. So the first thing we're going to do is adjust the parameters for our walls. So go ahead and click on any one of the exterior walls. Doesn't matter. You can also be in the level 1 floor plan while doing this to click on your wall. And then we are going to go into edit its type. And now before I've mentioned to always duplicate before you do anything with an edit type. This time we're not going to duplicate, so this way when we edit, it's going to edit all of the exterior walls that are currently generic 8-inch. So I'm going to edit the structure, and then I'm going to insert in 3 additional layers. So I'm going to build out this wall just like we built out our walls from our AutoCAD 3-room shed. So I'm going to insert in 3 additional layers, and then I'm going to move 2 of them above this core boundary and 1 of them below. So the exterior is on the top. So I'm going to move 2 above, and I'm going to move 1 down below it. Next, I'm going to adjust their function. So this is going to be our siding. So I'm going to give it a function of finish 1. This is going to be our sheathing. So I'm going to give it a function of substrate. Layer 4 is going to be our structure or our stud, and then layer 6 is going to be our interior finish, so I'm going to give it a function of finish 2. For the thickness of each of them, our siding is going to be 3/4 of an inch. Our plywood is going to be 1/2 inch. Our stud is going to be a 2x6 or 5.5. And our finish on the inside or our drywall is going to be a 1/2 inch. So all of those together should total up to 7.25 up here. And then we're going to adjust our materials. So to do the materials, I'm going to work my way from the bottom up. I'm going to click on by category, and then this little ellipses button or ... that comes up. I'm going to click on that. And then when you first open this menu up, you kind of have just this identity and then no material library. You can adjust these or adjust the size of it if you'd like. I usually am going to be working in this graphics tab, and I'm going to search for just drywall, or you can search for gypsum wallboard. Both will pop up. And you'll see here that it's already got a cut pattern for sand, which means when it makes a section cut, it's automatically going to put that hatch pattern in there anytime there's drywall, which is pretty nice. If you like working in consistent colors when you're in the 3D view, I recommend you check off this use render appearance box, but that's an optional thing. And I can click OK. For my structure or my stud, I'm going to go back into my materials, and I'm actually going to search for joist. Even though these are studs, this will give me a more accurate R value. So I'm going to use this joist layer with batt insulation. You don't have to check this box. It's not really going to do anything. And then again, checking our surface pattern and our cut pattern. We both want those set to none, so that's going to be good for this. I'll click OK. For my plywood substrate, I'm going to click on, or my plywood sheathing, I'm going to click on my little ... and search for plywood. Again, you can check this box off if you'd like. What's going to be really important is that this one does not come with a cut pattern. So we want to leave the surface pattern alone, but we want to apply a cut pattern of plywood. And then we'll click OK. And then for our finish, we're going to put just some clapboard siding on it. So I'll click on ... Now, when I search for siding, nothing comes up in this document. So what I need to do is open up my material library to see if there's something in there, which there is. So I can put clapboard siding by clicking on this up arrow to add it to the document. If there was a material I was looking for but I couldn't find, I can open up the material browser by clicking on here, and then I've got lots of different materials I could potentially choose from, and we'll do that a little more when we go to do our floorings later on in the project. But with my siding, again, if I want to check off to use render appearance, I can, if I'm going to work in consistent colors. And I'm going to give it a surface pattern. I'm going to leave it alone for cut pattern, but I'm going to give it a surface pattern of small horizontal lines. So that way it'll have a hatch when I go look at it in elevations. And then I'll click OK. So now I've got my wall materials built out, and I even have like an R value built out for this wall. I'll click OK again, and then I'll click OK just one more time after this loads. And it doesn't seem like much happened. You might have noticed a little shift in your walls because they went from 8 inches to 7¼ inch. So not a big change happened. But when I go look at it in the 3D mode, I'll notice a pretty big change, especially if I'm in consistent colors. But even if I go back into hidden line, we'll see that I've got like some hatch patterns now showing up on my walls. If I'm in consistent colors and I checked off those render appearances, I then can like see my siding and my gypsum a little bit better. If as you orbit around your model, you maybe notice that like some walls have like just white on the outside and then are siding on the inside, that means that wall is inside out. So you can just click on those walls and hit the space bar to flip them around. Now we're going to do the same process for our interior walls as well. So go ahead and click on an interior wall, edit type. Typically we would duplicate, but this time we're not going to duplicate, and that way it'll change all of our interior walls in one sweep. So I'm just going to go to edit this structure, and this one I'm going to do drywall, stud, and then drywall. So I'm going to insert in 2 layers. I'm going to move one above the core boundary and one below it. I'm going to give row 1 a function of finish 2 and row 5 a function of finish 2. I'm going to give row 1 and 5 a thickness of a 1/2 inch for each of them. And then row 3, this is going to be a 2x4, so we'll make it 3.5 inches. For materials, again, we'll click on where it says by category, then click on our ... We'll use gypsum. And you'll see here that it already has that checked off. Since I checked it off before, this is just going to be like our materials for this project. So it's going to always apply that. And then for row 3, I'll search for joist again, even though this is a stud. And I'll use this wood joist without insulation layer. And all of this is looking good for me. And then in 5, I'll do another thing of gypsum wallboard. So it's always good to kind of just look over your settings here and make sure it's looking the way you want. And then okay. And then okay. And now all of my walls have gypsum wallboard, and also then my exteriors have my siding and sheathing on it. So I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan. I can get there from just opening up this tab here or going into my double clicking on level 1 in my project browser. And I want to make sure that I have my visual settings, my visual style. I want it set to hidden line. And then I also want my detail level set to medium or fine. And I'll zoom in a little bit on one of these walls to kind of show you. So if I set the detail level to fine, we noticed a little bit of a shift, but not all that much. So really what that's showing me is if I kind of zoom in while I'm scrolling, you can kind of see that it's showing all of those different layers of the wall. To make it a little easier to see all of those different layers of the wall, we can use the command thin lines, which is keyboard shortcut TL, or this button right up here turns thin lines on or off. So what thin lines is going to do is just get rid of line weight for the time being so we can see the stud of our wall in there, which is going to help us with kind of our next step regarding dimensions. So the next thing I'm going to do is just kind of set my building size, just my general overall dimensions for my building. So that way when I go to put my floor in, everything will be sort of kind of squared away. So to use the dimension tool is keyboard shortcut DI to start the dimension tool, or it has a quick little shortcut button here as well. And when I go to place a dimension, I want to usually set this default instead of going to centers of walls. I want it to go to the faces of core. So you can remember when we made those walls just now, we had that core boundary and we only have our stud in our core boundary. And what's nice about that is then when we set this to faces of core, I can click on the core of the wall. It'll sort of want to default. I can hover over the middle, I can hover over the core edge or the finish face edge. So when I go to place a dimension, if I want to make a measurement for this wall here, I'm going to click on this face, scroll out, scroll in, click on this face, and then to place it, I'll click somewhere out here. Now to finish the dimension, I'm just going to hit escape a bunch of times. And when I look at my dimensions for the building, overall, from very edge to very edge, is 28 feet in total. And what I currently have is 27 and 10 1/4. To change that number, I'm going to click on one of the two lines that this, or walls that this reference, and you can see that that text kind of became blue and editable. If I click on this wall and change this to 28 feet, that wall shifted down. If I Control Z to undo, if I click on this wall and then click on this measurement, this wall shift up a little bit. So when we're placing dimensions, it's kind of important to think about which ones we're clicking when we go to move things. So I'm going to do another just dimension for these two, and I'm going to do them as a string. You could do them individually, but I'm going to do them as a string together. So that's keyboard shortcut DI again. This is already set to faces of core, and I can click, scroll over or pan over, click on this wall, and then it'll place both of these dimensions when I click. So I'll do kind of both at once. What I could have also done, I'll delete that, is I could do DI for dimension. I could go from one wall to the other, click up to place it. Then I could go to this wall and come to the other and click up to place it. I would just prefer doing them in one shot, but we can definitely change them that way. Now, I want this number to be, according to my drawing, 26 feet, and then this one to be 24 feet. So what I should do is kind of work my way down a line. So when I click on this wall, you'll see that both of these kind of update. So I'm going to make this number 26 feet and this wall shifted over. This now is also not the right number. And what I see a lot of students do is then they click here and they make this 24. And then they come back here and make this 26. And they just sit back and forth and struggle with it. Really, what I'm going to do to change this one is click on this wall and change this number to 24 feet. So the same thing then is if I had a dimension chain. So again, DI, or this button up here, from this wall to this wall, to this one, to this one, to this one, and then click up to place it. If I wanted to change these, I'd click on here, update this number. Click on here, update this number. And I'm just go. Right there, it warned me that this window's in that wall. I can just move that window over. I would click on this wall, update this number. Click on this wall, like I would work my way kind of down a line or down a chain as I was going. Those aren't the correct numbers. I was just trying to make a point. So sorry if I didn't make that clear. I'm just going to delete that chain. So I'll do another chain going down this way, but you could again do them individually. So we've got a measurement going from this wall to this one, then from this one to this one, and then this one to this one. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then click out to place those dimensions there. I'm going to start the tool, keyboard shortcut DI, or that button up there. Stud to stud, zoom down, make sure I'm clicking on the wall, and then click over to place. So since this actually happened to be the correct number, what I'm going to do to adjust it is I'm going to click on this wall here. And when I click on this wall, if I change this number, this should adjust automatically to 6 feet. So if I make that 18, this automatically became 6. And then the last two I'm going to kind of place for now is 2 here. So I'm going to go from this wall to this one to this one. And I'll click down to place. Now I want to be careful about to make this 26 and this 24 is if I click on this, when I click on this number is also going to change. If I try to make this 26 feet, now that's not 26 anymore. I'm going to Control Z. What I want to do is change this wall here to be 26 feet. And the good part about locking these two in place is that this wall then moved along with it, which was pretty nice. Pretty good for me. So that's kind of just the overall building dimensions done. Later on, we'll go over a little bit more of placing the rest of the dimensions through there, but that's going to be a little bit of working through on your own time. Essentially, any dimension that exists here in this drawing should also then exist within your building as well. But what I'm going to do next is just place a floor. And the way I draw floors is a little different than some other people I've watched. But really what I'm going to do is make just an overall floor system that is just going to be like my joist and my subfloor of just the whole building. And then afterwards, after I get the rest of my kind of building sorted out, I'm going to do interior finishes in each kind of room for it. So I'm going to start the floor tool, which is this button right up here. It does not have a keyboard shortcut. And for my floor type, I'm going to use kind of any one of these generic 10 or these 10-inch ones. They're not generic. So I'll use the wood finish one. I'm going to go into edit its type. And I'm going to duplicate this floor. And I'm going to call it subfloor. Then I'm going to edit its structure. And I'm going to remove this oak flooring. So I just want the plywood and the joist layer in here. So I just want it to be 10 inches total. I'll click OK and then OK again. And now what I want to do is I'm already in the pick wall tool. So I'm just going to hover over one of my exterior walls and hit tab and then click. And that's going to put a boundary around all of my exterior walls. Now, if I undo that, sometimes when we try to tab click, it won't work well. So what I could do is I could just click on each one of these exterior walls individually. It's going to take a few seconds longer, but it'll still get the point across. You want your walls to be on the outside of this core. So if your walls, when you selected them, or your floor is on that inside, go ahead and find where this flip arrow may be and just flip your walls to that outside of your core. And then when we're all done with our floor, we're going to hit this green check. So if I look three-dimensionally at my building right now, I now can see that I've got like a floor or a subfloor sitting there. My walls, though, I want to bring my sheathing and my siding down to cover this floor structure. And we don't have a way necessarily to do exactly that, but what we do have is a way to bring all this wall, the exterior wall, down. So what I'm going to do is select all my exterior walls, which I could do two different ways. I could hover over one and hit tab and then click to select that chain of walls. If that's not working, I can select one exterior wall, right click, and say select all instances in entire project, which will select all of my generic 8-inch walls in the entire project. And I'm going to give them a base offset of -10 inches. And what that's going to do is bring all of those walls down 10 inches so they're now covering that floor. And then when we go make our section view, we can kind of clean up how that stuff's getting connected or joined. I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan and just make a quick adjustment visually to it. So I'm currently in hidden line, which I always stay in. If I go into consistent colors, I really don't want all of this color from like the floor coming in here. So that's why I want to be in hidden line. However, we often like to have that solid fill for our walls, which we don't have in here in this moment. So what I'm going to do is go into my visibility and graphics, which is either this button here or keyboard shortcut VG, and I'm going to adjust the visibility overrides for this floor plan. So I'm going to go to my walls, which I can scroll down, or if I type W, it'll get me there faster. I'm going to adjust the pattern for my walls, and I want to put a pattern of solid fill and a color of, I usually go with this lighter gray, and then I'll click OK, I'll click OK, and I'll click OK. And now I have a solid fill to my walls, even though I'm in hidden line. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put a foundation on this building. So the first thing we need to do to put a foundation on is we need to create a level for the foundation. In order to create a level, you need to be in a elevation or section view. So you can click on any of these 4 elevations within your building elevations. And then to start the level tool is going to be keyboard shortcut LL or this button up here in your architecture toolbar. When I go to create a level, I want to make sure that I have checked off up here to create a plan view for it. And then I'm just going to click somewhere once it lines up on this side. I'm going to click to start. And then I'm going to bring it over here and click to end. So it created this view for me called level 3. What I want to do next is just rename this to actually level 0. There's a time where I haven't said please rename corresponding views, so I would recommend checking off yes or checking this box and then hitting yes. I'm going to leave it so that way it will show when I do demos. And now it's called level 0. And I'm also going to adjust its height to be -8 feet. That's just like me making up a foundation depth. We don't know, a lot about we're making a building that doesn't exactly have a site, so we don't know exactly where it's going and things like that, but we can make believe that we have a frost line where we have to put this down 8 feet. And then I'm going to hit escape a couple of times. I can go into my level 0 view by either double clicking on it here in my little spot elevation, or if I go to level 0 floor plan here. Now, I want to be able to look at my floor plan in order to trace over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an underlay on this view so that way I can trace over that view. So I'm going to turn my underlay to level 1. And since we're in the foundation, trying to trace our level 1 floor plan, we're going to change this orientation to say I would like to look up to this view instead. And that way we'll be able to see the line where our studs are that we're going to trace for these foundation walls. When we go to put those walls in, we'll use keyboard shortcut WA to start the wall tool. For our wall type, we're going to use a generic 8-inch masonry style wall. That way it'll be CMUs. A location line, we can use really either core face exterior or interior. If we use exterior, we'll trace around clockwise. If we do interior, we'll just trace around counterclockwise. But I'm going to do my core face to the exterior. And then I want to give it a top constraint or a top offset of negative 10 inches, because we have our floor that's 10 inches thick and we want our foundation wall to sit underneath that floor. I'm going to make it negative 10 inches for my top offset with a location up to the exterior. And then I'm just going to trace around my wall. So don't worry when you have little overlaps like that. When I click, that corner will resolve itself, or even like gaps like what's happening here. Once I place this wall, again, it will resolve itself. And down. So I'm just clicking around to trace. There are a few other ways I could do this, but for our first project, this is a pretty good way. If you want to turn thin lines off as well, that's again just TL will turn thin lines back off and you can have line weights. And we can go look at our three-dimensionally. So we now have our foundation walls. The last thing we're going to do in this video is put a footing onto this building. So to put a footing on, we're going to use keyboard shortcut FT, or you can go to the structure tab and it's this button here that says wall. By default, we have a 3-foot wide by 12-foot deep footing. Again, we don't really know what our building necessarily needs or what our soil bearing capacity is, so we'll just leave it alone. And I can just click on the bottom of my wall to place a footing, or I can even hover over one and hit tab and then click to place it on the chain of all of them. And that is where we're going to leave it for today. In our next video, we're going to add a roof and some sections, as well as then a site to our building, and go over the dimension tool a little bit more as well to get ready to finalize this project up.